Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today I have with me David Ellison, who is the Chief Data Scientist and Director of AI and HPC Engineering at Lenovo. Now, David, I saw in the beginning of your career, you started off in a little bit of engineering. You've, of course, further down and narrowed down to this particular path. But I want to hear from your perspective yourself. Tell me a little bit more about your background and how it narrowed you down to this particular path.
Absolutely. So I got my PhD in biomedical engineering, actually, and my path for data science is very different than it is now for new data scientists. When I was graduating with my PhD, I was looking for a job as a biomedical engineer and was having problems finding that first job, as I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing, having problems finding that first job. And then I had there's this new field created. It's called data scientist. It's a data scientist. It's a new thing. It's been coined like 2 years ago. But you have all the skills in the data analytics and the computer vision and the AI skills. You have all those skills. So why don't you apply to be a data scientist? So I did and got a job in like 2 weeks and have been in the field ever since. Now it's changed over time. I was in traditional analytics at the beginning, then I went into computer vision for a while, and now we're in generative AI and agentic AI. So it's been a journey, followed along, and AI has turned from a topic that no one wants to talk about, and like AI was that's a science fiction pipe dream, to an everyday usage thing.
Absolutely. And if you're not using AI, if companies are not using AI, they're already behind. So it has to become a topic they have to talk about, not only talk about, but also apply. And that's the trajectory I've seen really where you kind of focus on and narrow down in your particular career. So tell me a little bit more about your understanding, or let's just say your thesis on how AI should be applied at the enterprise level. We've seen, or I've seen on your profile, you're discussing the subject and specifically about how it should be applied in a way that actually moves the needle. So tell me a little bit more about that thesis you have. Sure.
If you think investing in AI is expensive, wait till you see the cost of being left behind. That's the key here is, things are evolving. Businesses are going to die if they don't evolve to AI and come in and start using it and leveraging everything that's out there. In order to do that, a lot of companies get stuck in POCs and in AI projects that are science projects. You got to focus on AI that delivers ROI. AI, just like any technology, if it's not delivering business value, is not doing anything. And I know if your audience is maybe a little bit newer into the field, you need to convert all your actions. Like, I created this AI model that has 95% accuracy. Great. What's the ROI? And so that's the type of thing that I take a look at in my business. Is, first of all, I start with a quantified business problem. You got to identify the baseline before you start building anything, and put some KPIs and KPIs, key performance indicators.
Of course.
Into your things, so like you're going to increase conversion by 20%, increase revenue by 5%. Then you tie every use case into a financial model. You assign business owners, not just technical. You need people that understand the business, not just the technology, to harness the expertise in both areas. Because if you can go off into the corner and do all your technical stuff, and no one cares about it. And then you're designing for production and not the demo. So those are just some of the hints and suggestions I have for designing an AI strategy that actually delivers ROI.
Well, I think it's a very important perspective, because if you see a large contingent of people doing is essentially understanding that AI is being talked about a lot. So applying in any way they can is one of the things that I've seen happen. But really understanding the problem you're trying to solve, the business problem you're trying to solve, and what needs to be done to have an ROI first, and then working backwards through applying AI is, I think, a very important perspective to have. So when it comes to really the enterprise level, we can talk about agentic AI, right? So when it comes to utilizing agentic AI, I'm sure that there's various industries it's being applied to, but one of the ones that are a bit more sensitive, you can say, are healthcare, and essentially the financial industry. So what's your perspective on utilizing AI in those particular fields?
Sure. That's important to have your AI governance and your CI/CD pipelines intact. You got to have your AI governance strong. At Lenovo, I established the Responsible AI Committee, and it's now transformed into its own organization and a Responsible AI Council. But you need to have, and we work with financial and healthcare industries a lot to provide solutions. It requires you understanding the regulations and how it applies and systematizing the place where you run into is when you don't design responsible AI with at the initial input. Yep. If you try to latch it on after the fact, it doesn't work. You need to think about it from the beginning. And healthcare and finance do much better at doing this, but they got to have a holistic plan as to how they're going to implement and systematize the checks and balances and recording the decisions that are being made. That whole process needs to be set out. It's a little bit more intensive than when we work with industries that are not so regulated, but it's an essential part. But AI can deliver value in these irregulated industries. They just require a little bit more effort.
And having a governance structure set up, of course, in guardrails, I understand. Now, when it comes to scaling these operations, I've understood that having agentic AI at scale can also open up to certain cybersecurity risks. So how do you have that balance between the risk of utilizing agentic AI at scale, essentially, with the possible chance of cybersecurity risk?
Absolutely. So you can quantify this risk. What is the harm done by a cybersecurity incident versus what is the value being delivered by the AI application? It allows you to make some trade-off decisions because nothing's going to be fully secure. I mean, we hope things are secure, but agentic AI is so new that there are going to be holes. There's going to be exploits. I mean, look when OpenClaw came out. Look at how many crazy exploits there were in that. That was a bit of an eye opener. So using agentic, and I will say, using agentic AI is like the hot thing to do right now. But a lot of use cases don't require agentic AI. And if you're bolting on agentic AI simply because it's the cool technology and not because it has a real business use case, well, then you're just adding complexity and adding vulnerability for no value. And
without ROI.
Yeah, that's where projects fail. So always when you're in your professional environment, apply the simplest solution to the problem that works. Yes, linear regression. Do linear regression.
Yes. And one more thing that was really interesting here is understanding the kind of problem that you're wanting to solve. I think that going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, that you're specifically talking about, pointing out, is solving the correct problem, understanding the problem you want to solve. How do you make the distinction between just utilizing a hot tool because it sounds nice, and of course, making sure you're solving the correct problem in the business where it has a proper ROI? How do you make that distinction yourself?
Well, you don't do it yourself. You work with business owners and business units and the technical people, and you come up with the KPIs. And that's why it's important to establish that baseline, what I was talking about beforehand. What is the current value of the business process? And then how much can you add on to it? Given AI, and that gives you a target. If you don't know what your baseline is, you don't know what you've improved. You don't know what's changed. So it is really important to develop the skills of being able to talk and translate technical topics into things that business people can understand. And that's a key talent that that's helped me in my career, is being able to look past all the details and say, okay, what is the main gist? What is the main thrust of the discussion here? What is the main vulnerability? What is the main advantage? And all that.
Yeah, excellent. And I've also seen that you've led certain teams, specifically a 16-person team, when it comes to doing these tasks. And I want to talk about a bit more of a non-technical perspective from you about leadership specifically. What's your specific perspective to leadership?
So leadership, again, you manage people, you lead people. You manage things, you lead people. So I believe in a leader model. They
Okay.
have this leader follower model, but you want to build leaders in your organization. You don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. You hire smart people and have them tell you what to do. And the only way
Yeah.
you do that is by building people, by expressing what your intention is when you're making decisions. Like, this is my intention to do this, and then having your the people working with you come up with the actual implementation, the actual solution. So instead of telling what to do, like, this is a step, I might know what to do, but I want them to determine what the current state of the art is, what the current steps are, so
Love
that they
that.
become leaders and they become decision makers in and of themselves. And when you empower people like that, and the corollary to that is you need to empower people to make mistakes. You need to celebrate mistakes when they happen, because that means you're trying and that means you're growing. If no one makes a mistake on your team, you don't have an innovative team. You have a dead team that's just playing it safe.
Yeah. And how do you approach hiring?
Hiring, the main thing I look for in hiring is the ability to learn. Whatever skill that they have, whether it's agentic AI or even the top hot skills, they're going to be out of date in 2 to 3 years. If they're not learning and continuing to grow, then they're a hire that's only useful for me for 1 to 2 years. That is not a hire. I don't hire for 1 to 2 years. I'm not like one of those companies that just churns through employees. I have people that stay with me year after year, because we're developing them, and they are learning as they're growing, and they're developing in that leader model. I definitely find it, a value or a important part of what I do is the leaders that I develop.
Right. And how do you determine if someone is going to be a lifelong learner or someone that can learn long term? Because that's going to be indicative of if they're going to be a person for the long term or for the short term, essentially.
Right. I usually approach this by asking them, like, what's the most recent thing they taught themselves, and how did they teach themselves? If it's always like, I went to class and learned it, that's not good enough an answer. I want someone that can dig into the research, because by the time a course comes out,
It's already
it's
too
already
widespread.
like a year old at
Yeah.
least. So you need to see if they can dig into the primary research, dig into the problems, and solve the problem themselves instead of waiting for a course to come out. I'm all happy for courses that get you caught up. They got you, but to be on the cutting edge, you need to be, in the
Ahead of the
primary
curve.
research.
You have to be ahead of the curve. I love that perspective. And I also saw that you had led or you helped lead global efforts or projects. Now that requires you to coordinate and work with people on the global level. One of the things that, and of course you were in a leadership position. So this is a very important question. Something you learned from mergers and acquisitions or studying mergers and acquisitions is sometimes a clash of culture being the reason for an unsuccessful acquisition or an unsuccessful merger between two companies. So how do you approach working with teams globally, and how do you mitigate potentially an impact of clash of culture?
That is an important question, and something that we deal with. I think as an American myself, there's a lot of ego that people can get involved in. As long as you're able to relinquish that and think that, oh, the U.S. way of doing things is the best way of doing things, and just assume, that your perspective is the right perspective without listening to your employees, without listening to the cultures they're coming from, you're gonna spin your wheels. You're gonna really cause some problems. It is a listening. You need to listen to what people are saying. You know, listen to how they value things, because work-life balance and the job is all different in different countries. And if you're like this 9 to 5, 9 to 9, 996 grinding mentality, that's like a US thing. You've got to
Yeah.
understand that, because Lenovo is a Chinese company. So
Yep.
I need to deal with cultures around the world. I need to deal with in leadership, how the Chinese think about things, how they approach problems and problem solving, and then also how half my team is in Europe. So I have all different countries in Europe that are represented. It is about listening and leaving your ego at the door.
I love that. So we covered some really important concepts, especially that thesis you had originally about understanding the problem you want to solve, understanding what moves the needle, and then applying AI to the problem. And then, of course, understanding between the risk of the ROI and the risk of utilizing agentic AI. That was a very good point you made. I also really love the perspective on leadership, building the people around you and understanding if they're going to be a long-term investment or a short-term investment. Those are very important perspectives. And I can especially appreciate dropping the ego, specifically as an American myself as well, born and raised here. It is, of course, going to be, it's very important to make sure you're acquainted with the people around you and you're not making them feel any way that maybe untoward, I would say. So I really appreciate those perspectives. What we'll do now is go ahead and shift the conversation more about you, David. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about you or your life that you wish more people knew about?
Family is first for me, and I think it should be for people. It's what brings the most happiness. So I have 3 kids and I'm married in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I guess another point is that, health is wealth, and you need to invest in your health journey. I'm not a perfect specimen of health, but I'm gaining muscle mass. I'm always improving at the gym. I'm going in three times a week, and working out every day. Sometimes at home, so not every day in the gym, but sometimes at home. So that's just part of our journey, because it doesn't matter to reach the end and you have this great family and then you die at 50. That's
agreed. That's a very, very good point. And you don't really have a proper life, in my opinion, if you're breathing heavy going up the stairs and you can't really live life properly. So it's a very important perspective. The second question I have for you is, what do you think is the biggest difference between you in your 20s and you now?
In my 20s, I was about learning, but I thought that you learned by the books. And that's why I invested so heavily in my PhD and such like that. I've learned now that learning is a full-time endeavor, and it is something that can't really be taught. You can teach. You can teach the ability to teach yourself. That is primarily what you need to learn. And what I didn't understand in my 20s is that learning to learn is a key driver of success. And then another thing is that I overemphasize in my 20s the technical skills over the personal skills. Mm-hmm. As AI does more things, as technical skills become more and more commoditized, the ability to interact with people and lead them, inspire them, help them, and make friends with them is becoming more and more important. The ability to communicate ideas, like I talked about with the technical, be able to bridge the gap between business and technical. Those are all things that I would have gone back and taught my 20-year-old self.
Wow, I really love that perspective on learning to learn. I've never had a guest ever tell me that. Why do you think it's so important to learn specifically?
Because the way things are advancing, and if you don't know how to adapt, it's like training your muscle for adaptation. Our mind is the most adaptable thing on the planet, right? We talk about all these species adaptation. Our mind is the most adaptable thing. Make it the most, open your mind up to what's happening, to the facts, to reading down to what's actually happening. Take that scientific approach and learn to grow your own mind.
Yeah, love it. So what I'll do now is share a very concise perspective on health and fitness, and then we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with your plans for this year, whether that be professionally or personally. So the perspective I want to share is going to be two components. One is going to be targeting, of course, weight loss. And the idea is doing that research, like you were discussing before, understanding the research first, and then creating strategy is very, very important. So if you look at PubMed, the primary way you actually trigger fat loss or weight loss is through a negative energy balance. And that just means you have the correct amount of movement combined with the right calorie intake. But if we look at the problem that's being faced by, I would say, a large amount of my audience, David, is actually executives and entrepreneurs. So a lot of the problem that's being faced is having to attend to a gym and attend to one specific location to make your transformation, because that's far more difficult to adhere to for people who are traveling or taking calls all day. Not all individuals can adhere to that traditional model of going to a specific gym or going to one specific location. But that isn't really required in the first place. If you look at the literature from PubMed, it's just having the right amount of movement and then combining it with the right calorie intake. So the key is with that is to make it location independent as opposed to location dependent. So what I would specifically recommend is leveraging something like step count for your movement, because you can do that while you're listening to this podcast. You can do that while you're traveling. You can do that essentially anywhere there's ground underneath you. So that means you can take calls and you can also fulfill the requirements to make a physical transformation at the exact same time. Now for muscle gain, I would say the main thing you have to understand is getting stronger each week is going to be the main way you're going to be gaining muscle. That combined with adequate protein intake is the main way you're going to be making sure you're going to be having the proper requirements being met per week. So the mistakes people make, in my opinion, is overdoing it by going 5 or 6 times a week. I would recommend focusing on what moves the needle first, such as gaining strength and having the right protein intake and the right movement, and then coming up with a strategy that is specifically time efficient. So hopefully those perspectives provided a different one today, and maybe hopefully was different from what was traditionally sold and not as doable that as other approaches specifically. And this is actually what I used to lose over 70 pounds and actually keep it off. So hopefully gave a different perspective and one that potentially looks like it'd be helpful to the ones who are listening today. So what we'll do now is go ahead and move the conversation to David's plans for this year, whether that be professionally or personally.
Okay. Professionally, I want to continue to grow my AI team. We have 3 people. We have 3 distinct groups. We have a data science group, which I really love working with. We have a system admin team that supports $2.5 billion worth of revenue pipeline. And we have another RFP team that supports another $1.5 billion of pipeline. So a lot of impact. I want to increase that impact. I want to pivot more towards some of the internal use cases of an AI and solving problems at Lenovo with AI. And then personally, I'm learning golf. And so, I'm trying to go.
Just recently?
How much skill was involved in golf and how long of a journey it's going to be. But it's definitely going to be a challenge.
Patience. I'm telling you, patience is key. I kept trying to kill the ball, and that never helps. So I would focus on the form and the patience. But those are some interesting plans you have for this year. So where can people learn more about you, David, and the work you do?
Well, I'm regularly on LinkedIn. I'm always posting things about AI that generates ROI. You can also reach out to me, reach out on LinkedIn, reach out in other forums. And I'm happy to share it. I also speak at many events and get out there. So, just follow my LinkedIn and you'll find out what's happening.
Thank you. This is Aryan Mohindra and David Ellison. Thank you for listening.